Hi, this is Andre, and this is video number 7. I wanted to make this video. I went, I went for a jog this morning, and I also asked God for a channel concept. I haven't had one. I wanted to make a video. It's been a while since I made a video, channel concept-wise. And I asked God. I said, can I have a channel concept? And He basically gave me one that was pretty basic and simple, and it's just based on some conversations that I had at the men's group that I go to. Basically, if we seek out God, if we seek out, follow our hearts. Something that I've learned in this process is that we actually find truths that are above and beyond even what we are seeking, even what we believe is possible. And sometimes these truths are even profound and impactful to the lives of the people around us, and even to the church itself. And I wanted to share a story. Sometimes in this process, going along, I shaved. I have I feel like I got a baby face. That's good and bad. So I went, and the thing is that when I go to the men's group, I don't go there to have conflict and but I do go to stand my ground and to make sure that I'm following my heart and my genuine will to find my truth. And the thing is that something that I have discovered is that I am connected to spirit, and I do have I believe a connection to God as well. And sometimes when I'm in this process, something that I've been able to do is hone. And if you follow my work, you can see the progression of me honing my skill, and growing into becoming a medium, starting out being able to channel, coming into even discovering what channeling was. So it's been a growing process, and I really think that something like going to the men's group is a perfect example of being around other people, other spiritual men who are pursuing the same thing. And the thing that I noticed is that's one of the places that has helped me hone that skill. For me, it's very similar to, and I'm sure anyone else out there who's a medium or connected to spirit, clairvoyant, has experienced the same things. For me, it's become a very strong thing. It starts to feel like almost like nausea in a way. That's the only way I can put it. But and it's actually a little uncomfortable. But I start to feel like a pressure in my core area, and I know something's coming, and I'm sure it's kind of like it becomes a skill, and I'm sure any other medium could attest to this. And you start to feel an overwhelming urge. And you just learn to know when to trust what you're feeling, and where to go, and who it's connected to. And one of the things is when I go to this men's group, I notice that it's almost kind of like an open, like a floodgate of spirit. And when I go to the men's group, because I'm around so many other, in such a spiritual environment, it's harder for me to control it. It's hard for me to keep that spiritual door closed, because I'm in it's such a strong spiritual environment. So when I go there and I have these questions and I have this, it's hard for me to contain myself, and it's hard for me to hold back. When I'm in other situations, it's become easier for me to do it. But when I'm in a very spiritual environment, or a very kind of strong, and it's not like I can't control it. It's just when in regards to God, when it's something that's something that I feel very strongly about in regards to spirit, I don't have to, but I feel like when it's appropriate, I still can do be appropriate. But when I feel like it's something that needs to be said, I feel like I have to say, that's what I'm doing. This is my work, and this is that's what. So I feel like I have to voice it. And so when I'm in this men's group, they've kind of come to know me as every time I go there, they're always like, "Are you going to ask questions today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am going to ask questions. And I'm going to ask a lot of them." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And So, I just wanted to share this story because I think it's important to know that it's good to ask questions. It's good to, especially when you're following this kind of journey, when you're seeking out God. He wants you to find Him, and so it's good to ask questions when it comes to this kind of thing. And I wanted to share with you just how profound these things can be, just how awesome certain truths can come about. So I went to one of these groups, and one of the things is, like I said, they've come to know me as I ask questions, and I was in one group, and they started we brought up an idea of Jesus being subhuman. He was a subhuman man. He was a being. He wasn't a man. And at first I kind of was resistant to that, just because during this process, I've become very connected to the idea of Jesus as like, I see things different. It's the best way I can explain it. I see things from a different point of view, and so that's why when I ask these questions, it's kind of it seems confrontational, but it's not. It's really just me looking at things from a different point of view. So when I go into the group, I kind of see, it's almost kind of like I see things if you're watching a movie, right? And it's one of those movies where you see things from different characters. I kind of see things from almost as from Jesus's point of view. I see Jesus is the best way I can put it. And so when they're talking about things, I always kind of come from a different point of view, and I'm like, well, what about Jesus? Like, what about him as a person, like as a man, like, and without bringing too many things up, some things just by me bringing up certain things about questions, you actually can see truths right in front. If you look at it that way, you can actually see a lot of truths that I bring up and looking at that actually right away become possible. If you look at it from his point of view, and not so much of a story of him, being this person that just literally come here and be tortured for us, and one of those things that I've learned is, I think, one of the things that I heard when I first came into this process was Jesus was a servant. Jesus was a servant. Jesus was a servant. That really bothered me for some reason. And I went to like about between 10 and 15 churches, between 10 different denominations, and some of them were very prominent. And I've come to believe that I think that Jesus was a servant, but he was a servant of God and his Father. He wasn't a servant of mankind. He didn't come here to be murdered. He was a servant, and I think that's didn't sit well with me. And I kind of went into church almost kind of like as like a and it's funny that I'm wearing a sports coat, and because I kind of feel like I look a little bit like an attorney, but it's funny because because here I am about to say, I kind of feel like sometimes I'm representing Jesus, like I'm his lawyer, and somehow I'm defending him, because maybe he was a servant, but he was a servant of God. He was a servant of his Father. He didn't come here to be a servant of man, and I think that that's a misconception, and I think that's something that we have come up with on our own to justify certain things. But he deserved a life too. He deserved to live too. He deserved the story of his own. And one of the things is that here's a perfect example of how me being close to that and not really wanting to stray away from that, and not letting the people around me kind of pull me away from that, and just staying true to that. That's my belief, believing in Jesus was worth his own life, and he was worth his own story as a man, and not, he was worth living, and having a full, and just different concepts, my own beliefs, my own, we all have our own, and just my own gut, and I deserve to be able to. So here's an example of just sticking close to that, and going into the church, going into this men's group, and asking questions based on that, and not being afraid to ask. Here's a pretty cool example of how truths can be revealed, even to the church, even to men that have been speaking the words of the Bible for many, many years can be kind of shown other ways to look at things. So one of the things that they said was, they said Jesus wasn't a man, he was a being. And he knew everything already. He knew that he was going to be crucified, and he knew everything that was going to happen. He knew he was going to be betrayed. He knew everything, literally everything. He knew everything that was going to happen. And so when they said that, I was just kind of like, okay, right on, rad, he like knew. And so and I'm just kind of taking everything in, and there was a couple questions that I would ask, and sometimes when I ask questions, they're like, there's the question guy again, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna ask these questions, I want to know. And so I asked the questions, and we got to this one point, this one particular about the crucifixion, and we started to talk about the crucifixion, and right when we started to talk about that, I started to get that feeling that the spiritual, and that just for me meant that God had something he wanted to relay, he wanted me to ask, and he wanted me to bring up. And again, in this particular environment, it's really hard for me not to. I don't even really hesitate, and I raised my hand and I said, question. I'm like, hello, question. And they're like, oh God, here we go. And I'm kind of like, so here's a question I had. I said, so is it possible that Jesus felt a level of pleasure during his crucifixion? And everyone was like, what? Whatever, dude. Like, no. Like, he was crucified. And I was like, well, I'm just having a vision. I'm and I even said, I happen to be connected to spirit, and I'm having this kind of concept and this vision of Jesus being crucified, and him just being very hyper aware of what was happening, and the colors, and the visual, and the people and the noises, and it was almost kind of like a moment in some weird way that he had been waiting for. It was like I don't know, and I was this is literally what I was doing. Because I was channeling it, and I was like, it's almost kind of like he was anticipating it, like he was waiting for this moment. And then I was like, and like again, it was channeling, and I was like, almost. And then if you think about it, if he knew everything, and right when I said that, and I was like, and if you think about it, if he actually knew what was going to happen, and here's a perfect example: everyone in the room was so hell bent on sticking to what they already knew, and weren't really listening to what I was saying yet, but they were just so hell bent on, like, God, here's the question, guy. The whole entire room goes, he did know what was going to happen, okay? He did know, and this is a perfect example. They actually, by doing that, they actually set me up, because I was just speaking from my heart. By doing that, by not letting me finish, and by not opening up their minds, what they actually did was they confirmed what I was about to say before I said it, and which made it so that they really couldn't say anything once I did. Is that and I was just talking from the heart, and I was like, if he knew what was coming, and they were like, he did know what was coming, he knew everything, and I'm like, okay, calm down. I'm just speaking from my heart. I'm just asking questions. If he did know what was going to come, as you just made very, very clear for me, thank you very much for reiterating that. If he knew everything that was going to happen, and then they were also like, no, it hurt. It was extremely painful, okay? It was very painful for him. It was a crucifixion. And I'm like, just let me finish. Is it possible if he knew everything? And then they're like, yes, he did. Calm down. If he knew everything, is it possible that he also knew he was going to be reborn? Which means his crucifixion was actually his birth. It wasn't his death. And they couldn't say a single word. They just confirmed that he knew everything, which means he knew he was also going to be reborn, which means his crucifixion wasn't his death, it was his birth. And they couldn't say anything, and the room was silent. And then I finally got to, and then I got complete silence to actually finish my point, which was, so if the crucifixion was actually his birth, then like any other conception, there may have been an element of pleasure. And the room was dead silent. No one could say anything, because it's possible that I was right. And that's just an example. That's an example of how if you fight for your own truth, even when it comes to Jesus, even when it comes to God, if you stand close to your word, and let me also add, I love these guys, and this is just a perfect example of this is like, you know, it's like men, you know. Afterwards, we all laughed, and their minds were open. And guess what? I went back, and guess what? Not that they didn't like my questions before, but they let me finish before they let me finish now before they all contradict what I'm saying, because all they did was help me prove my point. And actually, I'm probably right, you know. And they know it, and it's actually not. It's not like a bad thing. This is how it works. We're finding truths. They want me to be right. I want them to be right. That's the whole point of this group. Is we're searching for the truth about Jesus, about God, about ourselves. And sometimes things get heated, but this is the kind of heated that we want. This isn't about fighting. This isn't about war. This is about finding truth. This is about finding love, about finding the truth about our hearts, about finding the truth about Jesus' struggle and his journey, and about how maybe that moment was something he was waiting for. If he knew it was coming, he was probably anticipating it. Think about everything he had to go through, all of the struggle, everything he went through was for that moment. It must have finally felt good just to get there and just to be done, and then be born. For him, that was his birth. So a different point of view, you know, maybe they're right too, and that's the thing. Maybe there's truth in their version and truth in my version, and then together we come up with something that's cool and modern and fitting for today's world and evolution and the future and tomorrow. So tomorrow today, I like that. Let's have tomorrow today. So that's just a fun little story of how you can even have conflict. You can even have heated moments. But when it's in a group of love, when it's in a group to find truth, it's actually kind of fun. You want to find a new answer. You want to find a new idea, and that's the point. New ideas, new answers, and a new way of thinking. Have a great day.